Good morning. Let's begin. All right, I'm sorry, starting a few minutes late. Okay, so we left off about yesterday. Today's Daf is Lamed Ches 38. We left off Lamed Zayin Amud Bey's last two lines. So the Gemara says, remember again, the Gemara is learning out all of these cases, or yesterday we spent on all of these different drashas from different psukim that seem to all echo the same basic sentiment, namely that if a person is going to be liable to a death penalty, then they're not chayiv for mammon. They're not chayiv for any type of monetary compensation. So we left off yesterday with the drasha from Chayre Mina Adam. So the Gemara's last two lines, V'loma Meila below Sikhu Kofer Shamis Minei. So do we not? Why do we need this pasuk of Kol Chayrim? Excuse me, I should say Chayre Mina Adam Lo Yipadeh. Why do I need that pasuk? After all, I can learn all of this out from the pasuk of Lo Sikhu Kofer, of do not go ahead and take Rabosai Kofer means a monetary payment or an atoning monetary payment. So I can learn everything out from Lo Sikhu Kofer. That would teach me Shamis Mina Lo Sishkol Mamona Minei V'Sifterei. Right? Lo Sikhu Kofer teaches me that I may never take money in an effort to go ahead and atone for someone and thereby exempt someone from a death penalty. Kol cherem lamli. Why do I need the phrase kol cherem? To which the Gemara says, Amrami bar Chama itzrich. And you need it. You know why? Sakata et chamina. I might have thought top of Lamed Ches. Harim yirihecha dahargu derech aliyah shlod nitna shigagaso lekapara. So we'll say, I might have thought that when does this apply? That Rashi says, Hani mili, the lo sikhu kofer liftar otseach mezid miktala. When do we say that we do not accept monetary payment as a form of atonement for one who has killed? That's only one who killed what we call, say, derech aliyah. Rashi says over here, heicha dahargu b'mezid. Derech aliyah, literally in an upward fashion, usually refers to someone who, not usually, refers to someone who killed intentionally. Rashi says, b'mezid derech aliyah, Behanafas yado hikol me'achorav tekavasa b'shogeg lo nitan lekaparas galus kirichsiv vayipal derech nefila. So as I say, I might have thought, when do we say that money can't atone for you? That's only when you killed what's called derech aliyah in an intentional fashion. So if you're an intentional killer, that is a very severe transgression. Money cannot atone for what it is that you did. However, hargo derech yirida. The nitna shigagaso lekapara, but Abba say if you kill what's called derech yirida, literally in a downward motion. So the simple case would be I'm going down the ladder, and I slip and I fall on someone. So the mice again, where Abba say in such a situation like that where it's accidental, there is kapara. What's the kapara? The kapara is galus. Is exile to the Iran Nidachas, excuse me, Iran Miklat. So I might have thought that in that kind of case there should be atonement through monetary compensation. I might have thought we could accept money from the person who killed and ultimately exempt him from a death penalty. Kamashmala, no. So we'll say apparently what the Gemara is suggesting over here is from the pasuk of Lo Sikhu Kofer. Apparently that would have only taught me that money can't atone for one who kills b'mezid, but it wouldn't have necessarily taught me the halacha for one who kills b'shogeg. Therefore, the pasuk of Kol Kofer. Lo Sikhu Kofer. Kol Cherem teaches me that even one who kills b'shogeg cannot go ahead and atone through monetary payment. Amalei Rava. So Rava said, Hami d'tanei b'chizkiya nafka. But 1 second, we could have learned this out from Rabbi Chizkiya. Rabbi Chizkiya's teaching. What did Rabbi Chizkiya teach us? Rashi says, Mid'tanei b'chizkiya nafka shen chilik bein derech aliyah l'derech yirida. So what Rava is coming along and saying is, we already learned from the yeshiva of Chizkiya that we do not distinguish between someone who killed b'shogeg or someone who killed b'mezid. I mean, obviously we do distinguish halachically, but we do not distinguish between them in that in both cases one cannot achieve atonement through monetary compensation. The Tana de Bechizkiya, because we learned from the yeshiva of Chizkiya, Make Adam umake behema. So I'll say, remember again, we quoted this drasha before. The Torah links Make behema, Make Adam. Torah says, Umake behema yeshalmena. If you go ahead and you injure, you kill an animal, you shall pay. Umake Adam, if you kill a person, you are put to death. So the Torah links Make behema and Make Adam. How so? So the Gemara says, Ma Make behema lo chilakta bo bein b'shogeg lemezid. Just like Rabbi say, if you injure an animal, so it makes no difference if you did it unintentionally or intentionally. Bein miskavein, I should say, right, by accident or purposefully. Bein miskavein l'shem miskavein, intentionally or unintentionally. Bein derech yirida l'derech aliyah, you did it in a downward motion versus an upward motion, which Rabbi say again also means shogeg lemezid. Rather, what does that halacha lepotra mamon ela lechayva mamon. So we'll say in all of these cases, if you do damage to the animal, you are never exempt. Even if you did it accidentally, you always must compensate. There is always mamon. Af makeh adam. So we'll say. So what the Gemara is saying over here is that there is one din in makeh behema. What's the one din in makeh behema? If you injure an animal or kill an animal, what's the one din? Pay. That's it. We don't care about the circumstances. We don't care about your intentions. We don't care. If you killed the animal, you've got to pay. Af makeh adam. So to again remember, why does the Torah mention makeh and makeh behema in the same pasuk to teach you that just as the din by an animal is absolute, payment in all circumstances, the din by Adam is also absolute, namely, af makeh Adam, lo sachlok bo, ben shogeg lemezid. If you kill a person, there is no distinction between shogeg and mezid, miskavin l'shem, miskavin, intentionally or unintentionally, ben derech yerida derech aliyah, in a downward motion versus an upward motion, lechayva mamon, el lepotra mamon. I will say in every single case where you kill a person, the halacha is the same. I will say, obviously, the halacha is not the same, right? But if you kill someone accidentally, you're going to galus. Intentionally, you're executed, but the halacha is the same in what? There is never monetary obligation. Whenever you kill a person, there is never a monetary obligation. That is klal gadol. When you injure a person, there's monetary obligation, but not when you kill a person. So therefore, the Torah is linking makeh adam and makeh behema to each other to say that just like the halacha by makeh behema is absolute, i.e., in every single case, l'maisa, again, you have to pay. So to in every single case where you kill a person, you will never have to pay. Granted, the final sentence of the person will vary on how he killed the other, but one thing is for sure, no mamon. So the point over here is you see that Lamaisa, again, Tana de Bechizkiya, they already learned out this idea that you never pay money for for killing a person. We learned that from these Sukkim, and therefore again, I don't need really any of these previous drashas. Ela Omar Rami Bar Chama Itzrich. I need the pasuk. I need the pasuk of Kol Cherem, and I'll tell you why. Sakadaitcha Amina. So I'll say, because remember, the Gemara just asked the Kasha. You're telling me what the Gemara just posited before is that I need the pasuk. So far, I have two psukim. Right? I have two psukim. I have two psukim. Lo sikhu kofer and Kol Cherem lo yipade. Kol Cherem lo yipade. Right? So why do I need both of those psukim? So the Gemara wanted to suggest that lo sikhu kofer is a case of where you killed someone b'mezid. If you killed someone b'mezid, you can't buy yourself out. There's no such thing as monetary atonement. And kol cherem lo sifta is talking about where you kill someone b'shogeg, that there is no monetary atonement either. The Gemara then says, well, one second, why don't I need either of those psukim? According to Tana de Bechizkiya, we learned this halacha out from what? Makeh adam makeh behema, makeh behema, makeh adam makeh behema. Equating makeh adam and makeh behema. I tell you that just as the halacha by makeh behema is absolute, you have to pay in all circumstances, so too makeh adam, the halacha is also absolute, namely, you don't pay in any circumstances. So why do I need the pasuk of kol cherem lo sifta? To which the Gemara says, Ela amrei bar chama itzrich, you need it. Sakadai tchamina hani milihecha desima es eno bahar gabo. I might have thought that when does this apply? Literally, when you blinded his eye and then you killed him. Now, both say, now look at Rashi for just a moment. Ela amrei bar chama. Itzrich chad mehani Christ. The Gemara says, I need both of these psukim of both lo sikhu kofer and kol cherem lo sifta. And I'll tell you why. Look at this Rashi. It's the Rashi that begins Hachi garsinon ela amrami barchama. Itzrich chad mehani Christ. I need one of these psukim la ashmoinon delo leovid beitarti, that I do not punish a person twice for both misa and mamon. Va'af agav del nafkalon mi velo yason. Hani mili delo anish. I'm reading Rashi still. Delo anishin le betarti hecha desima es eno v'hargabo ba'ose makume. So we'll say, listen to this. Let's say a person goes ahead. Reuven goes ahead and hits Shimon in a way that first he blinds Shimon's eye, which I also remember that's ayin tachas ayin. That's monetary compensation. He blinds Shimon's eye, and then he kills him with the same blow afterwards. So right, first he blinds the eye before he kills him, and then but with the same blow he kills him. So I would have said, in a case like that, Hani mili hecha desima es eno v'hargo. If I went ahead and Reuven killed Shimon, or I should say Reuven first blinded Shimon, monetary compensation, and then killed him with the same blow, that's when I would say that perhaps he's exempt from monetary compensation. Why? Because it's the same maisa. It's the same Maisa that did both. The same Maisa that caused monetary damage to the loss of Shimon's eye is the same Maisa that ultimately killed Shimon. That's when I'd say he's only chayiv. Actually, I don't know what happened over here. That's the, it looks like it's shut down. That's the only time, don't worry about it. And that's the only time where Lemaisa, I'd say that he's pater for the mammon and only chayiv for the money. However, al hecha desima es eno. But in a case ultimately again where ultimately he went ahead and he blinded the eye. V'hargo b'davar acher. But listen to this. Let's say, however, again instead of one maisa, it's two different maisim. It's two different actions. So let's say I went ahead and I blinded his eye, and then I killed him with something else. Look at Rashi. B'davar acher, b'maka acheres u'bebas achas. So we'll say, let's say I'm very talented. I could go ahead and do two things with two different hands. So what do? With my left hand, I blind his eye. With my right hand, I kill him. Right? So it's not the same action. But yet what? It's bas achos. So two different actions, but that are occurring simultaneously. I might have said in that kind of case, Ema nishkol mamona mine. I might have thought that in that kind of case, what? Maybe you should have to pay. In other words, we'll say the havamina is, when should I be exempt from monetary compensation? That's when the same act caused both the monetary compensation, or I should say the monetary damage, and death. That's when I'd say I'm exempt, when there's real simultaneity. But if there's just simultaneity of time, but not simultaneity of action, meaning it's two different actions but occurring at the same time, perhaps I'd say that you would be chayiv to pay. Therefore, Rabbi say what? Therefore, I need the psukim to teach me that even in these cases, I would still be pater from mammon. In other words, at once there is a din of misa on me, on the perpetrator, then Allah I'm exempt from any monetary damages I would have to pay for the victim. Amarli Rava, the truth is, we can even learn this out from another statement of the Yeshiva of Chizkiah. Why? The Tana de Bechizkiah, because they taught in the yeshiva of Bechizkiah, ayin tachas ayin. Rabbi say, if you injure someone, you have to go ahead and pay an eye for an eye, velo ayin tachas nefesh, but not an eye for a life. Not an eye for a life. Rabbi say, what does that mean? So the idea over here is that ayin tachas ayin represents monetary compensation. So if you injure someone monetarily, you have to pay them with money. But if you take their life, ayin tachas nefesh, we don't say that you could pay financial compensation in lieu of being executed for taking someone's life. V'lo ayin v'nefesh tachas ayin. Rather, you're not obligated to pay. Excuse me, let me say it differently. V'lo ayin v'nefesh tachas ayin means that you are not held accountable for both taking someone. I should say differently. You can't pay with your life and with your money for taking someone's life or for taking someone's eye. Ela Amar Rav Ashi, it's tzrich sagadait chamina. Rather, Rav Ashi says we need the psukim, and I'll tell you why. Sagadait chamina hoel v'chidushu shechidsha b'knas. Listen to this. So Rav Ashi said like this. I'll tell you why I need the psukim, because since knas is a chiddush, penalty payments are a chiddush. Afagav the miktal mashalim, I would have thought that you should have to pay a knas payment, even if what? Even if lemaisa you are going to be executed. Look at Rashi. Sakadaitcha amina dechidishu shechit shetorah bechol tashlumi knas she'eno din el gzeres melech ba'alma v'chevan dechidishu gzeres chok ema afagav deika behedja misel shalim. So say I might have thought like this. I might have thought that since knas payments are chidushim to begin with. Mamish. Okay. So the Gemara says, I often hear myself speak, right? So or talking to myself. So the Gemara says the following. So the Gemara says that I might have thought that by knas, since knas is a chiddush, therefore again, I might have thought that you'd have to go ahead and pay it even though you are killed. Kamash malon, no. So the Gemara says, however, therefore again, that's what the psukim teach me. Ulerabba do amr chidushu shechid shetorah b'knas. Afagav the miktal mashalim haikol cherem I avedle. But I will say, here's the issue. There is a shita of Rabba which we saw 2 days ago. That's what? That is, since knas ultimately is a chiddush, the halacha is you do pay knas even if you are executed. So if that's the case, what does he do with the pasuk of kol cherem? Sarvalei ketanakami. Holds like the Tanakama to Rabbi Chananya ben Akavya. I also remember again we had this yesterday that the Tanakama, the opinion who argues with Rav Chananya ben Akavya, who says that if a person is being led out to be executed, and someone said, Erko alai, his value is on me. So remember again, the Tana who argued on Rabbi Hanani ben Akavia says that such a neder or such a vow is worthless. Why? Because a person being let out to be executed has absolutely no value, and therefore again they use that pasuk of kol cherem to teach this halacha. So we'll say what comes out halacha lemaisa, what comes out halacha lemaisa from this sugya is again, or I should say, what comes out from this sugya is we are left with the fundamental machlokes as to the following. Here's what everybody will agree with. Everyone will agree that where there is misa, there is no mamon or malchus. That's what everyone will agree with. That halacha, so once against if you are being executed, then at the end of the day, you will not have to pay, you will not get lashes. With perhaps one notable exception, which is what? Which is the position of Rabbah, who holds that although you can never be chayiv from misa and mamon, you what? You'll be chayiv for knas and mamon. That's the shita of Rabbah. Since knas by itself is an incredible chiddush, therefore again that's the one situation. Rabbi said, remember the distinction between knas and mamon is compensation, monetary compensation, which means that the money that you pay has a direct correlation to the damage that you've done, as opposed to knas, which is just an objective payment that seems to be arbitrary. So again, Rabbi will hold that where there is misa, there is no mamon, but where there is misa, there in fact is knas. Says the Mishnah, Na'ara shenis arsa v'nis garsha. If a girl was betrothed, had erusin, not nisuin, not erusin, just erusin, v'nis garsha, and then she was divorced from her husband, and again in parentheses, she was then violated by a man. After her divorce, she was violated by a man. Rabbi Yossi Aglili says, "Ein lo knas." She doesn't receive any kind of penalty payment. She doesn't receive any kind of penalty payment, and we'll see ultimately what his svara is in the Gemara. On the other, Rabbi Yossi Aglili Omer ein lo knas. She has no penalty payment. Rabbi Akiva says, "Yesh lo knas." She does get a knas, but ukinasala atzma. She gets to keep the knas. Now, I was saying, remember, understand, under normal circumstances, the Torah says that who does the knas go to? The knas goes to her father. Here, Rabbi Akiva is saying that the knas goes to her. Says the Gemara, my time with Rabbi Yossi Aglili. What is Rabbi Yossi Aglili's logic? Meaning, why does Rabbi Yossi Aglili say in this case that there is no knas? Omer Kra, because the pasuk says, Asher lo orasa. The pasuk says that she was not betrothed. Ha-orsa, but we see from here that what? If she was arusa, if she was betrothed, ein lo knas. She doesn't. So Rabbi Yossi says, I don't see what you want from me. I'm just darshaning the pasuk straight. Right? The pasuk says that she was not betrothed. We infer from that if she was betrothed at some point in time, even though now what? Even though now she is divorced, that lemaisa, she is not entitled to knas. Rabbi Akiva will say, Asher lo arasa la'avia. Rabbi Akiva says, no, Asher lo arasa means if she was not betrothed, then what? Then the knas goes to her father. Ha-arsa, but if she was betrothed, meaning obviously now that she's divorced, la'atzma, she gets to keep the monetary payment, the knas. And she doesn't say monetary, she gets to keep the knas. I say, well, one second, if that's the case, alamiata, na'ara v'lo bogeres. So I'll say, when the pasuk says that the knas for violating a woman only applies if she's a na'ara, so can you infer from that using Rabbi Akiva's logic? That's what? We say na'ara and na'ara bogeres. Hani hachanami de la'atzma. So maybe I'd say same thing. If she's a na'ara, her father gets the knas. But if she's a bogeres, it's still knas, but what? She gets to keep it. Or besula, or the pasuk says she has to be a besula. V'lo be'ula, I would say maybe again, hachanami de la'atzma. Maybe in those cases, what it means is using Rabbi Akiva's drasha. Maybe in those cases, Rabbi say, if she satisfies the exact criteria of the pasuk, then the knas goes to her father. But if it's a different criteria, goes to her. El the Gemara says no. El legamre. Rather, no. When the pasuk says these things, for example, when it says that she's a nara, nara means what? That she only gets the knas if she's a nara, but not the bogeres. And when it says that she's a besula, only if she's a besula and not if she's a beula. There's no legamre means those words represent exclusivity. Hachanami legamre. So why don't we say the same thing over here? Asher lo orasa. Asher lo orasa means what, Rabosai? That she was not betrothed, which means what? That if at some point in time she was betrothed, what should be the halacha? She's not entitled to the knas, like the sheet of Rabbi Yossi Aglili. He was asking Rabbi Akiva. No. The truth is, we need that phrase Asher lo orasa for another drasha. Because what? Asher lo orasa, prat lenara shenis arsa v'niskarsha, comes to teach us about a nara who was betrothed and was now divorced. She'ein la kinas divrei Rabbi Yossi. that the Rosh is just restating the Mishnah, that according to Rabbi Yossi, she doesn't get a kinas because she was betrothed, even though now she's divorced. Rabbi Akiva Omer yesh la kinas uknasa la'aviha. Rather, Rabbi Akiva says she has a kinas, but the kinas belongs to her father. Now, obviously, we just saw a major contradiction, because Rabbi Akiva said in the Mishnah that in the case of a girl who was betrothed and now divorced, she gets to keep the kinas. Now, with this price, he just said what? That the kinas goes to her father. We'll discuss that contradiction in just a little bit. The point of the Gemara is focusing on over here is what? That according to Rabbi Akiva, if she was previously betrothed and now divorced, there is still a knas. Rabbi Yosef clearly says no knas. And Rabbi Akiva says it's logical that there's still knas. Why? Since her father is entitled to the kesef kiddushin. Now, what does that mean? What that means is if this na'ara now, who was betrothed and got divorced, was to go ahead and become betrothed again, while still a nara, her father would be entitled to her kesef kiddushin. So just Rabbi Akiva says, just like her father is entitled to her kesef kiddushin, therefore, Avia zakai bekesef kinasa. Therefore, father is also entitled to the money from her violation. Ma kesef. Furthermore, ma kesef kiddusha. Just like Rabbi said, father still gets the kesef kiddushin, even though again it would be a second kiddushin after she was betrothed and then divorced. Af kesef kinasa. So too again what? So too again the father gets the money from the kesef kinasa, the knas from the violation, even though she was betrothed and was divorced. Im kain. So if that's the case, what do we do with the phrase of asher lo arasa? Mufna lahakish lo v'ladon himenu gzeir shava. It's open for us to go ahead and compare to it and to make a gzeir shava. What's a gzeir shava? Ne'emar kan asher lo arasa. It says over here that she was not betrothed. V'ne'emar lahalon asher lo arasa. And that's talking about the mefata. That's talking about a girl who was seduced. So it says she was not betrothed. Makan nun, aflahalon nun, just like the Torah explicitly says, by the case of the man who violates a woman, that the penalty payment is 50 units of currency. Therefore, again, so too by the mefata, by the seducer, it's also nun. Umar lahalon shkalim, and just like by the seducer, the Torah tells us that he has to pay in shkalim, which is the highest unit of currency. Afkan shkalim, so too over here by the violator, you also have to go ahead and pay with shkalim. So again, therefore Rabbi Akiva understands that asher lo orasa is here to teach us what? That lemaisa we make a gzeir shava between ones and mefata, and it's a two-way gzeir shava. We learn from ones to mefata that you have to pay 50 silver pieces, and we learn from mefata to ones that it has to be in shkalim. But I will say, so where we're holding right now is the following. So essentially, fundamental machlokes Rabbi Yosef and Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Yosef Lili says that if a girl was betrothed, subsequently divorced, and then violated, there is no knas, there is no penalty payment, and he learns that out from the phrase of asher lo orasa, which means she was never. That's what Rabbi Yosef Lili understands. She was never betrothed. Because she, and therefore, again, if she was betrothed at some point in time, the violator is exempt from the financial. It's a technicality. Rabbi Akiva says, no. Halacha l'maisa, even if she was betrothed and now divorced, as long as she's still a nara, there is a penalty payment. And not only that, well, we have a machlokes now. In the Mishnah said Rabbi Akiva said it goes to her. In the Brayso, Rabbi Akiva said it goes to her father. But what does Asher lo orasa teaches us? Rabbi Akiva says we use that for something else. That's used for a gzeir shava between the mefata and the ma'anis, to teach us that in both of the cases, the penalty payment is 50 silver pieces, and in both cases you have to pay with shkalim. So the Gemara goes weiter. The Gemara says, Im kain, ma talmud lomar, I'm sorry, Rabbi Akiva, last two lines, Rabbi Akiva, my chazis, da asher lo orasa l'gzeir shava, ubesula l'mi'ute be'ula. Now, both according to Rabbi Akiva, why is it that he decided to use asher lo orasa for a gzeir shava, and yet again besula comes to exclude a beula? Okay, follow this chain of thought for just a little bit. Amud beis, ema besula l'gzeir shava. Why don't we just say that besula comes to teach me gzeir shava? Right, besula comes to teach me. In other words, that I could go ahead and use the word besula. We have to create a gzeir shava between ones and mefata. So instead of going ahead and making the gzeir shava with a different word, use the word. Let me see this again. Rabbi Kiva, my chazis asher lo rasa gzeir shava. Why did you use the phrase asher lo orasa to make the gzeir shava? Ubesula lo meute beula, and the word besula comes to exclude a beula. Instead, I'll say the following: Ema besula gzeir shava. Use besula to go in and create the gzeir shava between the ones and the mefata. Now, I will say, now understand, if you go ahead and you use besula to make the gzeir shava, then what that would mean is besula is not used to exclude ba'ula from the knas, and therefore even if a man were to go ahead and violate a ba'ula, he would still be chayiv to pay the penalty payment. Va'asher lo orasa prat linna'ara shenis arsa v'niskarsha, and go ahead and what? Use the phrase asher lo orasa Rabbi Akiva, like Rabbi Yossi Haglili does, and use it to what? Use it to exclude a girl who was betrothed and subsequently divorced, that she is no longer subject to the kinas of ones. To which the Gemara says, mistabra asher lo orasa l'gzeir shava. No, it makes more sense to say that asher lo orasa is used for gzeir shava, meaning between ones and mefata, shar anikore ba na'ara besula. Because ultimately, again, it makes more sense to say that we are only talking about, because I could still call her a na'ara besula, meaning I both say, a girl who was betrothed and subsequently divorced, the assumption is, still fits into the category of a besula. Look at Rashi. Sharni kori ba na'ara besula. Afa pishinis arsa v'niskarsha. Even though she was betrothed and subsequently divorced, but ultimately, again, she's still a besula. Kidichsivkra ava buula she'ein ani kore ba na'ara besula ein la kinas. So what the Gemara says is it doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense to go ahead and include a buula in this, because the Torah explicitly says in both the onis and the mefata that a stafka applying only to a besula. So therefore, again, the Gemara says like this. Rabbi Kiva's logic is the following: it makes more sense to use the phrase asher lo orasa to create the gzeir shava between ones and mefata. Why? Because I will say a girl who was betrothed and subsequently divorced still fits into the general category of what? Of besula. And therefore it doesn't make sense to make the gzeir shava from besula, which would then go ahead and also include ba'ula in this category of knas. To which the Gemara says, Adarabba, just the opposite. Besula l'gzeir shava, I would say no. Let's use besula for the gzeir shava. And I will say, remember, if you use besula for gzeir shava, then what does that do? That precludes you from making the drasha of besula v'lo ba'ula, and even a ba'ula will be subject to the penalty payment of kinas. So the Gemara says, Adrabah, besula gzeir shava, let's use besula for gzeir shava, shahare ani koreba asher lo orasa. Because also I could say that what? I could still say that Lemaisa, she satisfies the criteria of a girl who was not betrothed. Look at Rashi. Ad Rabba besula gzir shava, v'lav lemiute be'ula biznus, el yesh la kinas lebe'ula biznus, shahari anikore osa na'ara asher la'orasa. And in a chinami, again, I'll say if I were to do this, I would include a woman who had already had relations and therefore was a be'ula. To which the Gemara says no. Mistabra ha ishtani gufa, Veha lo ishtani gufa. Rather, the Rashi says, "Mistabra arusa yesh laknasu bu'ula eila." It makes sense to say that only a besula goes ahead and receives the knas, not a bu'ula. Why? Because ha ishtani gufa. This one ultimately, again, her body was changed, i.e., the bu'ula already, her body was changed. Veha lo ishtani gufa. But this one, her body was not changed as much. So I will say, what that's saying over here is, if you think about the impact of the violator on the woman, or the violation on the woman, ultimately, again, the violation on a basula creates a quantifiable or measurable physical change that does not exist by the ba'ula. Since the ba'ula already had relations, therefore, again, I will say the physical change, not talking about the impact, chas v'shalom, but the physical change that occurs to the woman as a result, ultimately, of the violation is different by the ba'ula than it is the basula. So Gufa, the Gemara goes back and re-examines this. Rabbi Yossi Aglili hasvara minali. So I will say, let's go back a little bit. Excuse me, I'm sorry, I read that wrong. V'halo ishtani gufa, not a gufa. Rabbi Yossi Aglili, hi svara minale. So we'll say, where does Rabbi Yossi Aglili get his svara? Remember, so Rabbi Yossi Aglili's svara is that what? That if a girl was previously betrothed and then subsequently divorced and then subsequently violated, even though she's still a nara and she's still a basula, she is not entitled to the knas payment. There's no knas in such a case. So where does he get this? From minale. Nafkale midisanya. He learns this out from the following brisa. Kesef yishkal kimawar habesulos. Remember, this is talking, right? So she'll take the money. This is about the knas payment. She'll take the money in accordance with the amount that's given to the besulos. So what do we learn from here? Kesef yishkal kimawar besulos sheyehezeh kimawar habesulos. The Rebbe say this. Remember, this pasuk is talking about over here by the mefuta, by the woman who was seduced. So we learn out from here, sheyehezeh, the amount paid to this one, to the mefuta, to the girl who was seduced, is just like kimar habesulos, just like the amount of money given to the girl who is violated. Umoar habesulos kazeh, and ultimately what? The moar habesulos, the amount paid to the basula, or I should say, the nature of the payment to the basula should be like this. So we had this before. In other words, that the amount paid to the mefuta, to the mefata, to the mafata is the seducer. But the amount of money paid to the woman who is seduced is like the amount of money paid to the woman who is violated, i.e. 50 units of silver. But the nature of the payment that is given to the one who is violated is like the nature of the payment given to the one who is seduced, which is shkalim. So we'll say, look at Rashi for just a moment. Rashi says, Kimar habasulos. Minyan hamafurish etzel ones, umar habesulos yushkalim kazeh shekasov bo yishkal. So the Gemara says, I cash. So therefore, again, this is the svara of Rabbi Yossi Aglili. Therefore, because the Torah links the two, therefore, again, just like in one case, we're only talking about a girl who never experienced erusin, ayasher lo orasa. Therefore, that'll apply in both of these cases. And therefore, if a girl had been previously betrothed and subsequently divorced and then violated, simply the halachos of kinas do not apply to her. So now Rabbi says, now that's Rabbi Yossi Aglili. Now the Gemara says, let's go back a little bit. Kasha Rabbi Kiva, Rabbi Kiva. We have a fundamental contradiction. Remember again, Rabbi Kiva in the Mishnah said that if a girl was betrothed and then divorced and subsequently violated, so she does have a knas, and what? Uknasali atzma. She gets the knas herself, versus Rabbi Kiva in the Brisa who says that Lamai said there is a knas, but the knas goes to the father. So we have an inherent contradiction of Rabbi Kiva and Rabbi Akiva, to which the Gemara says no. Trei Tanoi Vali b'Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi said there is a machlokes about what Rabbi Akiva says. There are two different opinions in Rabbi Akiva. Bishlam Rabbi Akiva demas nisin lo asik zer shava umafkili lekrami pshate legamre. So we'll say Rabbi Akiva of the Mishnah who says that there is a knas, and the knas goes to her father. So Rabbi Akiva the Mishnah will say that the gzer shava that we made will not come along and uproot the pasuk from its basic meaning. El Rabbi Akiva de Braisa asik gzer shava mafkami pshate legamre. But according to Rabbi Akiva of the Braisa who says that the knas goes to the father, he will use the gzer shava, and the gzer shava uproots the pasuk from the most basic meaning. Amar Rab Nachman bar Yitzchak says, Amar Rab Nachman bar Yitzchak, Kari Bei Asher Lo Arusa. So to which the Gemara says, because Rabbi Akiva will read the pasuk as saying, ultimately, she is not an arusa. So the Gemara, meaning instead of reading it Asher Lo Orasa, he'll read it as Asher Lo Arusa. So the Gemara says, Arusa? If she's betrothed, if she's mamish an arusa, baskilihi. I will say, if the girl is actually an arusa and a man violates her, then lamaisa, again, that's a penalty. Forget about knas. That again that's adultery. That's punishable by misa. Sagadai tramina. I would have thought hoil uchidishu shechid shetorah b'knas. I might have thought the following: that since Rabbi said knas is a chiddush to begin with, right? This knas is a chiddush. Any knas is a chiddush. I would have thought afagav the mikdal mishalim. I would have thought that what? That even though he is going to be killed for violating a girl who is betrothed, that Lamaise should still have to pay. Kamash Malan, no. Therefore, the pasuk of Asher Lo Arasa teaches us that what? That wherever there would be Misa, there would be no, like if she is actually betrothed, there would be no din of penalty payment. But according to Rabbi who says that because Knas is a Chiddush, the Chiddush is Afagav the Mikdal Mishalim, even though you are killed, you still have to pay. Meaning Rabbi says, if the sheet of Rabbi keeps coming up, that Rabbi holds that even where there is Misa, you still have to pay the Knas. So what would you say? Meaning, what would you do with the pasuk? Like Rabbi Akiva de Masnisin. He holds like Rabbi Akiva in the Mishnah, and Rabbi Akiva in the Mishnah would say that Lamaisa again. that Lamaisa, again, once she is betrothed and then divorced, Einachinami, again, she would get to keep the knas herself. Okay, so we'll say, so what comes out is, fundamentally, this between Rabbi Yosef Lili and Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Yosef Lili says that once she has been betrothed and subsequently divorced and then violated, there is no knas. There is no kinas at all. And again, Rabbi Yosef Lili's drush is very simple. It's very simple. He would say, Shala Orasa. The pasuk says she was not betrothed. Once she was betrothed, even if she's not currently betrothed, obviously the pasuk can't be talking about a girl who is presently betrothed. Because if she's presently betrothed, then what? Forget about the knas, there is a din of misa. Whether Rabbi Yosef Lili says, if she was previously betrothed, no din of kinas. Rabbi Akiva says there is a din of kinas, but machlokes in Shitas Rabbi Akiva, who gets to keep the knas? Is the knas hers, or ultimately, again, does the knas belong to her father? How do we pass? Can we pass like Rabbi Akiva in the Mishnah? So in Inachinami, if a girl is still, now again, remember, the caveat over here is that she's still what? She's still a nara. She has to, the only knas, she has to still be a nara, but assuming she is still a nara, then halacha lamaisa, there still is a knas in her she was previously betrothed, and we pass like the version of Rabbi Akiva in the Mishnah, namely, who gets to keep the knas? She gets to keep knas. And I both say, now that is not just a din by knas. We'll see other examples of once a girl becomes a nara, there are certain other examples of what we'll call financial independence. Financial independence, where she will get to keep certain monies, even though, again, she's not a full-fledged adult. But in this case of knas, the violator will have to pay the knas, but she gets to keep the knas herself. But so let's just go a little bit weiter in the few minutes we have. So the Gemara says, Tan Rabbanan, knas salami. Who gets to keep the knas? So the Gemara says, La'avia. So her father gets to keep the knas. So now remember, this is talking about kasaka daitcha bestam anusakai. Now the Gemara says, the Rashi makes the assumption, the Gemara is making the assumption that right now we're talking about a regular case. A girl is violated, a nara is violated. Who gets to keep the knas? So the Gemara says, La'avia. Her father gets it. Vish onum la'atzma. Others say, no, the girl gets it. La'atzma. What are you talking about? She gets it. Am I? How can you say, if we're talking about a stama case of an nara who's violated, Torah explicitly says that what? That her father gets the money. So how can you say that she gets it? So the Gemara says, Amrav Chista, Hacha benara shenes arsa v'niskarsha askinan kamiflagi. So askinan. Rav Chista says, what are we talking about over here? Oh, we're not talking about a stam case. We're talking about a case of a nara, of a girl who was nisarsa, was betrothed, and then subsequently divorced. The kamiflagi beplukta d'Rabbi Akiva d'Masnisin v'Rabbi Akiva d'Braisa. And I will say, interestingly enough, Rabbi Yosef Lili doesn't even come into the picture. Why doesn't Rabbi Yosef Lili even come into the picture? Because Rabbi Yosef Lili holds that if a girl was betrothed and then divorced and subsequently violated, that's what? There is no knas payment at all. Rather, again, Rabbi says that this is the machlokas within Rabbi Akiva himself. It's the machlokas tanaim in the din of Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva of the Mishnah would say that Lamaisa, she gets it. Rabbi Akiva of the Braisa would say that her father gets it. Amr Abai, so we'll say Abai says, Bo'aleha umesa. What happens again if a man violates a girl and she dies? Now we'll say again, remember, not dies as a result of the violation, right? But rather, again, if you look at Rashi, Bo'aleha umesa, lo hispek ha'avla amido b'din ad shemesa. We'll say, let's say again, a man violates a woman, father is going to take him to Beis Din. But before Beis Din has a chance to go ahead and hear the case, what happens? She dies. She dies. So what's the halacha? Is the father still entitled to the knas payment or not? So Abaye says, Bo'aleo Mesa, Potter. He doesn't have to pay. Shene Emar, V'nasan la'aviha na'ara, because the pasuk says that the violator will compensate the father of the girl, V'lo la'avi Mesa, and not to the father of the deceased. Meaning the fact that the Torah phrases it as he has to pay the father of the girl, that indicates to us that what? That at the time of payment, he still has to be the father of the girl, i.e. she's alive. But if she is no longer alive, then ultimately, again, the violator is exempted based on a technicality and would not have to pay the penalty payment. All right, we'll stop over here for today. We'll pick up with Milsa de Pshita in Meretz Hashem tomorrow.